Nancy.
Hello, Jennifer. Lovely to see you.
Thank you very much for joining our webinar today. It's really our honor to have you share your perspectives or on the behalf of the college or the university or even wider UK university landscape. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I think, my university and particularly Pembroke College has very close links with Hong Kong that stretch back probably well over a century now. I had such a wonderful time with your hospitality when I visited Hong Kong. Goodness, is it 3 years ago now? I think I'd hoped to be back, which may be deferred, but it's wonderful to have the opportunity to talk to our friends in Hong Kong.
Thank you. Well, hopefully the COVID situation will subside and global order will come back to the norm, if the norm will ever come back, but a new norm. Yeah. So the COVID has been a very challenging year, I'm sure, to all industries, but in particular for education, where, on-site, in-person teaching has always been highly valued, especially at Oxbridge, where we have those tutorial system, one-on-two, one-on-one teaching. So how has COVID over the past year impacted the delivery of the Oxbridge philosophy in education?
Yes, I think it's been obviously an extraordinary year for us as for everybody else. And I suspect that if we'd been asked before this, how can you do Oxford or do Oxbridge without actually being in the wonderful places that we love with face-to-face contact we value so much, probably that it was absolutely awesome. So I think being, should I say pleasantly surprised, seems with it, but surprised at how possible it has been to sustain the culture and the things that we value in Oxford about academic excellence, about this working. So yes, we've had to move things online. We've really found that tutorials can work fantastically online, even when we've got students all over different corners of the globe, which has been wonderful. I think the fact that our dominant teaching mode in college certainly is the tutorial with one academic and two students. It has been fine to do online. We've missed seeing people in person, but that level of kind of intimacy and closeness means that we are dealing with learning that works online. We don't get people sort of lost at the back of an online class behind a blank Zoom canvas. Everybody is there, everybody's involved. And when I talk to my colleagues who are actively teaching students, they often say to me, there are things that we've learned about what we can do and that we can add to the way that we teach when we go back to person, because I think nobody wants to go purely online, but I think we've learned a lot of things that can enhance our pedagogic practice in a lot of ways. So, I think some good things will have come out of that, but we're absolutely, so keen to get back to actually being able to see our colleagues and our students, because there's nothing quite like that, as I think we've all found out over the last year.
So in terms of going forward, right, because last year there's news that there's been quite a few outbreaks in university campus. What might Oxford implement to the extent possible, ensure the safeguarding of the student community and the faculty?
Yes, a huge amount of work was done, of course, in the university and in each college, because we were all separate colleges with that priority on keeping our community safe. So we have a really well-developed system of readiness stages that we adapt to in the light of the government guidance that we get about the situation. So we are now really rather good at ramping up and ramping down our restrictions. So when we started at the beginning of our Michaelmas term in October, we had a lot of restrictions in place in college around keeping our staff and students in place so that we could do face-to-face academic teaching in college. So those involved, what you would expect, strict social distancing rules in tutorials, as well as mandatory face coverings inside, a really rigorous approach to hygiene. And then, of course, the college is a teaching community, but also a domestic community. So we have done a lot of work on making the home environment for our students safe. Some of the experience of being together that isn't the important part of this experience So we set our students in households, which is perhaps in Oxford terms often a traditional staircase. So six or seven students mostly, some smaller, some larger. They would be grouped together and they would be permitted to socialise without face coverings and without social distancing, but not to do that between households. Our libraries and study spaces and our halls were all very COVID-proofed. And we had, very few outbreaks at all. It was a safe place during that term when really things were quite difficult in the UK. We were obviously not entirely unaffected by COVID. It did reach us, it came in, but our last COVID case in college is now more than 6 months ago. We haven't had anyone testing positive since November, which we're very proud of, and I think reflects the efforts that huge numbers of colleagues have gone to preserve people's safety.
That's great to hear. Thanks, Nancy. And of course, given COVID, there's been a lot of news about school exams cancelling, different exam boards having different policies towards giving out students final grades. What's your thoughts on that, and how might UK universities in general, or Oxford in general, evaluate students given the possibility of potentially inflated prediction grades or school assessment grades getting into first year of university?
Yes, I think we're living in very uncertain times. We're lucky that colleagues in the university do a lot of work in keeping track on what exactly is happening with qualifications, both in the UK and overseas, because for us, probably only just over half of students will actually hit the traditional UK levels because we recruit from all over the world, and also not everyone in the UK takes A levels. So we're very conscious of all of these things. I think for us, we have a really rigorous admissions process. So actually the qualification result that pops out at the end is just one of a very big basket of things that we're looking at through our admissions process. So every student who's been made an offer has been assessed on their UCAS form, their references, their completed qualifications, their predicted grades, written submissions, tests, often more than one, and at least 2 interviews. So we kind of feel that for us, in a way, the reliance on the A levels and the actual qualification results isn't as strong as it is for other universities, because we have a lot of information about our candidates. And together with that, we, and I think every college, have always written out to our offer holders, please tell us about anything that affected your education or has affected you personally. And we'll also be asking colleges to do the same thing for us. So I think when we come August, we have a lot of information about our individual offer holders, and we do feel that we have a lot of confidence that they are the right people who will flourish in Oxford.
The students will try their very best to bridge the gap if there were any gap in between the exams and Oxford first year. And I remember being in Oxford, actually, there was a lot of support system in the first year to help students acclimatise.
Yes, that's absolutely the case. And again, speaking of good things coming out of COVID, we've already had a 2-hour session with all of our offer holders where they got to meet their tutors and some other students. And our wonderful students in the JCR have organised a number of events that, again, will help them to acclimatise. But we will do more study skills sessions and all sorts of things that are so much easier to do online than in person. So there's a lot of ways to try and help offer holders back.
Right. So Nancy, another quite topical issue that parents are raising here in Hong Kong is that they've been reading recent news that universities such as Oxbridge have been focusing or shifting recruitment from state to grammar schools. And they are wondering, given most of the students coming from Hong Kong going abroad to study may consider independent schools, whether there has been any significant impact on independent school students' likelihood of getting into top universities such as Oxford.
So I think our goal always at Oxford is to recruit the most academically able students, students who we think would benefit from the way that we teach, from the resources that we offer, and really flourish with us. And we are really very agnostic about where those students come from. We recognise that there's talent to be found across our country, across the world, from all sorts of backgrounds. So we don't have quotas, we don't discriminate. What we do have is a real commitment to understanding student attainment in the context of where they come from. So we do want to know what the individual background is, what is the attainment of the school. Are we seeing somebody who is the one person in their school who's got to this level in 20 years, or are we looking at a school that's sending 30 people to Oxford every year? And what we do is we have that information and then we evaluate everybody entirely fairly against those criteria. So there's no discrimination. It is simply that we want to understand the best that we can about all of our applicants to make sure that we are looking at their applications fairly within the context from which they come.
Yeah, what about the impact of Brexit on independent school admissions or on education in general in the UK? Because I suppose with Brexit, the European students may be counted as international. Would that add to the competitiveness for international applicants?
So as I said, we've never had any quotas in Oxford. I think other universities do so. But from our perspective, it doesn't make any difference in those ways. Clearly, the big difference for our candidates from the EU is that they will have to pay the same fees that students from the rest of the world have to pay, and that obviously people from Hong Kong have been very used to having to pay over previous years. So that is a difference. Previously, they counted as UK students, and our fees for UK domiciled applicants are government regulated with a ceiling, so they are lower. So that's one big difference, but that's purely for EU applicants. And I think we will see clearly the numbers of EU applicants probably dropping because not all of them will realistically be able to pay a fee. Other impacts. So we have exited the EU Erasmus scheme, which underpinned our exchanges with Europe. It's been replaced with a much broader-based Turing scheme. And the idea is that that's a scheme that will support exchanges and travel globally rather than just in Europe. So we're quite excited about seeing that for many of our courses. For instance, Japanese, Chinese, but also hopefully exchanges with a much more diverse range of universities. So we think that the Global Britain emphasis that the government is very keen on should lead to some positive impacts for non-EU applicants and candidates. There's a lot of rethinking about visas to really try and attract the sort of talent that obviously applicants to Oxford already demonstrate.
Well, that's really great insights. Thank you, Nancy. Also, recently, I'm sure due to many different reasons, whether it's geopolitical concerns or whether it's just people's interest shifting, we've heard there's been a significant increase in application numbers going to UK in general. Have you seen any spike in application number from particular regions over the years?
So I think in recent years it's been reasonably consistent, but applications overall to Oxford are growing every year by probably 3 to 5%, if not more. And the number of places we can offer is not growing at like the same pace. I think if I look at our the country that sends us the most undergraduate applicants, China, followed by the US, and then Singapore and Hong Kong are very much traditionally in our top 5 of overseas applications. So applications finally doubled between 16 to 9, but applications between the US, from the US, Singapore, and indeed Hong Kong grew by 25% in that time. So that's a very significant increase. And I think every year we really see our overseas applications growing, as you'd expect, much more quickly than our home applications. So it's going to continue to be very competitive. The rate of success for Hong Kong domiciled students is just over 10%. But I think one of the issues there is course choice. And we know that a lot of our international and Hong Kong students choose some of our most competitive subjects like maths or PPE or even economics and management, where we're looking at 15 to 20 applicants per place, growing very, very quickly. So those are some of the challenging issues that we're dealing with.
Right, I think you're absolutely right. It's not just the number of applicants going up, but also concentrated on certain subjects that are more popular for Asian applicants. So in terms of your evaluation process of students applying, I'm sure most, if not all, the students applying for Oxford would have met the minimum requirement grades. What is the assessment and evaluation process of potential applicants? And is there like a sequential order or priority weighting to any parts of these components?
Yes, thank you. I think absolutely they will have met the minimum requirement grades. And, for many subjects, again, thinking about A-levels, our minimum, our offer is 3 A's at the International Baccalaureate. It will tend to be 39 points. But in practice, the students who actually succeed are likely to have 3 A star A-level or to have 40 or 45 points on their IB, or a pretty perfect record in the US qualifications, for example. So we can't just go on predicting grades. It's different for every subject, as we'd expect. But it will include the UCAS form that's common to all of the UK universities. We do look at personal statements and references, but they're probably not as important for us as they are for other universities. So we look at prior attainment where we have that, but we're very conscious that for students in pretty much every international system other than the UK, there isn't a GCSE equivalent of exams at 16. So we don't often have that for a lot of our applicants. So we will be looking at the predicted grades very closely. We will, for many subjects, be looking at written work. That's mostly for humanities subjects, where we will ask candidates to send us something they've written at school or at college. It can be a homework essay or an exam. It just needs to give us an insight into what their work looks like. And admissions tests. And I think every time I talk to a school audience, I really very strongly emphasize the importance of admissions tests, particularly for any student that doesn't have GCSEs or any record that we have of prior attainment. That's going to be probably the main thing that makes the difference between whether you get an interview or not. So there is a lot of material on the Oxford website about our admissions tests, lots of practice tests. And one of my big pieces of advice to candidates is to really focus strongly on practicing those and learning how to do well. So that will be just the most important thing. That part of the process in terms of determining whether you get an interview will be that test. And that will then shortlist for interviews. So we interview around 3 candidates per place. As I said before, our application rates for subjects is very different. So for economics and management, 15 applicants per place won't get an interview, only 3 will. For some of our less popular but still fantastically high quality subjects such as theology, you have a much higher chance of getting an interview. And the final decision isn't just the interview. I think some people think the Oxbridge interview is that's it. If you don't absolutely ace the interview, you have no chance of getting in. The final decision does include all of those things I've talked about before, as well as your interview performance. And there is a lot of information on university websites about exactly how this works for a particular subject. which will include just saying, what are the things that we're looking for? What are the qualities we're looking for? And I can't emphasize too much to prospective applicants that we're really, really looking for people who love their subject, who are really passionate about studying the subject that they've applied for, and will really enjoy our teaching method, which gives you a huge amount of time and opportunity to talk to world-leading experts in that particular area.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nancy, for such detailed, insightful sharing. And last question, which is probably the most anticipated question from parents and students, is if you have any advice for students preparing for their application to Oxbridge or even education in general at top institutes in UK, what do you think they should be doing from the age of, let's say, 15 to 18 before they apply for UK universities?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So I think the first thing is, qualifications do matter, and the grades that you have a good strong focus on the qualifications you're taking or college is really important. So that's the kind of baseline. As I've said, in terms of the Oxford approach, I would absolutely suggest just on tests, not too much emphasis on the personal statement, but to stay with the personal statement on the UCAS form. We are to get UCAS forms that show some personality, that tell us something about yourself. And that's the sort of thing that will get picked up in interviews. And at interviews, what we are trying to find out, probably more than anything else, is about your enthusiasm for and aptitude for the subject. So I think what I'm saying is we are not very interested on your extracurriculars. We love students who do brilliant things outside their studies, and Oxford is a fantastic place for that, whether your passion is entrepreneurship or debating or drama. Oxford is a wonderful place for that. We will not assess your application off the basis of any of those extracurriculars. What we are looking for is, if you tell us that you're applying for PPE, politics, philosophy and economics, what have you done to demonstrate your interest in politics? And that doesn't have to be an internship in a political office. It can be as simple as reading papers, exploring those ideas and telling us what you think about them. If you read something about Brexit, what did you then go and explore? What did it make you think? How did you link that to economics? How did you link that to the political situation in the UK? Perhaps how did you go back and investigate the 1960s and the 1970s when Britain originally joined the EU? We're looking at that for that sort of inquiring mind who really thinks around topics and thinks with themselves around what they think about issues. We're also looking for, and I would say this is really important for people going into interviews. Interviews at Oxford are not designed to find out how much you know. In a way, that's what the qualifications do for you. They are designed to find out what you think, and you will never get everything right in an interview. What we are looking for is, how do you deal with challenge? What if your carefully thought out idea about something is being very rigorously challenged by your interviewer? Well, that's what you will be doing every week in a tutorial. So we want to see how you respond to that, because it's absolutely critical that you can respond positively and productively to that challenge, and that being challenged makes you think and makes you improve what you're thinking. So I think those would be the main things, some very practical things about focusing on success in your qualifications on acing those tests, but really doing what we hope any successful Oxford applicant would just be doing anyway, which is being really interested in your subject, talking about it, telling yourself, exploring what you think, and wanting to communicate that to us and to other students.
Great. Thank you so much, Nancy, for such great advice. I'm sure students in Hong Kong and in Asia will still be highly encouraged to apply for top unis in the UK, especially given Oxbridge are really very special places with tradition and academics from all the different disciplines. So thank you so much for your time today. Really great chatting with you. Unfortunately, the Zoom connection is not great. So we will hopefully see you in person next time you can travel to Hong Kong.
I very much hope so. And thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And just to say, we love having applicants from Hong Kong. We have some absolutely ordinarily talented students from Hong Kong in Pembroke and across the university, and we really encourage more applications.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Look forward to seeing you in Hong Kong soon.
Absolutely. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.